I had always thought of myself as a woman of control, responsible, calm, and careful. I loved my husband, John. We had built a life together, one full of small routines and comforting predictability. Our home was warm, and our marriage, while not perfect, felt like something I could depend on. But lately, something had been missing. I didn't know exactly when it started. Maybe it was the long hours John had been working lately, or perhaps it was the exhaustion that came with balancing everything in my life. The truth was, I had begun to feel a sort of emptiness creeping in. It wasn't anything I could really define, just a vague sense that something was off. I told myself it was nothing. It was just the wear and tear of daily life, right? But deep down, I knew something had changed. It was a lazy afternoon when I finally gave in to the temptation that had been sitting at the back of my mind for days. I had been walking through the kitchen, running my fingers along the countertops, and my eyes fell on the cucumber lying there, almost innocently. I couldn't help but chuckle at myself. It was absurd. But the thought lingered. Just for a minute. Just for me. I hadn't done anything like this in years. It was ridiculous, wasn't it? But sometimes, in the quiet of the house, when I was alone, I felt a strange sense of freedom. I wasn't doing anything harmful. It was just me, indulging in a small, secret moment. I made my way to the living room, the cucumber in my hand. I knew it was silly, but there was something about the stillness of the house, the way everything felt so disconnected, that led me to do it. Just a little relief, something to break the monotony. As I sat down on the couch, the sound of the front door opening suddenly froze me in place. I heard his footsteps, John. He was home earlier than expected. My heart skipped a beat, and I looked down at what was in my hand, panic rising in my chest. I quickly set the cucumber down beside me, my pulse racing as I straightened myself out. I couldn't let him find me like this. It would be too much, too embarrassing. I quickly stood, trying to act natural, but I could feel the tension rising in the pit of my stomach. The door creaked open, and I heard John's voice, calling my name. "Hey, babe, I'm home early," he said, his voice casual, but I could hear the tiredness in it. He had been working so much lately, and I knew he didn't get much time to relax. I quickly composed myself, forcing a smile as I turned toward him. "Hey, you're early. How was work?" John stepped into the room, and I could see the exhaustion in his face. He had been under so much pressure at the office, and it was evident in his shoulders, his tired eyes, his slow movements. He took off his jacket and dropped it over the back of a chair. "It was long," he said, his voice low. He walked toward me and wrapped me in a tight hug. His arms were warm around me, and I felt a sense of relief wash over me. Maybe it wasn't too late to make everything feel normal again. But just as I was beginning to relax, I noticed the faintest, almost imperceptible glance at the couch, where the cucumber still lay. I hadn't moved it, still unsure if I should make the first move in clearing it away or just pretend nothing had happened. John pulled back from the hug slightly, a curious look in his eyes. "What's that?" he asked, pointing to the object next to me. His gaze flickered between me and the cucumber, his brow furrowing. There was a pause. The air in the room seemed to thicken. I froze, caught between my embarrassment and the urge to make everything seem as normal as possible. How was I going to explain this? How could I justify this moment, this thing, so trivial yet somehow so intimate? I swallowed hard. "Oh, that," I trailed off, trying to think of an excuse, a way out. My thoughts raced, but everything I came up with felt insufficient. His gaze didn't shift. He was waiting for me to say something, anything. Finally, I gave a small laugh, though it sounded forced. I was just cleaning up," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I was about to put it away. John didn't respond immediately. Instead, he simply looked at me with an unreadable expression. It wasn't anger or frustration. It was more like curiosity. Was he questioning me, or was he just trying to figure out what exactly was going on in my mind? After what felt like an eternity, he broke the silence. "I see. Well, if you're feeling a little stressed out, I'm happy to help with that." I blinked, surprised by his response. He wasn't upset. Instead, there was something else there, a hint of something more. Something suggestive. John's suggestion hung in the air like a question I wasn't sure how to answer. His eyes were no longer just tired. There was something else in them now. Something intimate. Something that made my heart race, even as my mind screamed at me to put a stop to this, to remind him that we had our boundaries. But there it was, his offer, hanging there between us like a thin thread waiting to be pulled. I cleared my throat, trying to regain some semblance of composure. I don't know what you mean, I said, my voice shaky, the words falling out before I could stop them. John took a step closer, his face softening. I can tell you've been under a lot of stress lately. And, well, I want to help. I know we've been busy with everything going on. Maybe we just need a little break from everything, huh? His voice was warm now, soothing even, like he was trying to comfort me. I didn't know what to think. A part of me wanted to believe him, to trust that maybe, just maybe, he was offering me a way out of this emotional funk I had been sinking into. But the other part of me was terrified that whatever was starting to surface between us was nothing like what we had before. And that scared me. I was too focused on my inner conflict to notice how close he had gotten until his hand gently brushed against my arm. The touch sent a shiver down my spine, and I instantly regretted it. I should have pulled away, should have stopped this before it went any further, but I didn't. Instead, I stood there frozen, unsure of what I wanted or what I needed. I felt so disconnected from everything from him. But here he was, standing right in front of me, offering me something that I couldn't quite grasp. I don't think this is a good idea, I said, my voice faltering. We've got a lot on our plate. Maybe we should just talk more. John didn't move away, his eyes never leaving mine. He sighed, a soft, almost regretful sound. Rachel, I know we've got things to figure out. But sometimes, we just need a little something to remind us of who we are, you know? Something to break the tension. I wanted to push him away. I wanted to tell him that I wasn't that person anymore, that I wasn't the girl who could easily lose herself in a moment of weakness. But his words were making sense, more than I wanted them to. I could feel myself slowly unraveling, losing the grip I had on my emotions. And deep down I knew, this wasn't just about the cucumber anymore. This was about something deeper, something more dangerous. And I wasn't sure if I was ready to face it. Rachel, John said, his voice low, almost hushed now. We don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with. But let me make you feel good. Just for a little while. We deserve that, don't we? The offer felt like a lifeline. And for a moment, I thought about how easy it would be to just give in. To let go of everything that was weighing on me and just surrender to him. But something inside me screamed not to, screamed that this would change everything. That this wasn't how I should be dealing with my feelings. But then his hand was on my back, gently pushing me toward the couch, and all my rational thoughts flew out the window. The moment I sat down, I felt a rush of warmth flood through me. My body betrayed me, reacting to his touch, his proximity. I had told myself I wasn't ready for this, that I couldn't let go of the emotional distance we'd created between us. But right now, all I could think about was the way his lips hovered just inches from mine, the heat radiating from his skin. John leaned in, his breath warm against my ear. You deserve to feel this good, Rachel, he whispered, his voice thick with something I couldn't quite place. Just let go. For a brief second, I closed my eyes, trying to push away the guilt, the worry. Maybe I didn't deserve this, maybe none of us did. But at that moment, I didn't care. I was lost in the sensation of his lips against my neck, the way his hands explored my body with a familiarity that both comforted and confused me. My thoughts scattered as he kissed me gently at first, then with more urgency. The weight of the world seemed to fall away, and all that was left was this moment. His touch, his presence. It was like a pull I couldn't resist. A pull I didn't want to resist. I felt my hands trembling as they slid up his chest, finally finding their way to the buttons of his shirt. I had never been so unsure of what I wanted in my life, yet here I was, giving in to something I had no business indulging in. John pulled back slightly, his hands now resting on my hips. Are you sure? He asked, his voice hoarse. His eyes searched mine for any hint of hesitation. I looked at him, trying to make sense of everything in my mind. But my heart, my body, had already made the decision. I nodded, not trusting my voice to do the talking. John's hands were on me, and for a moment, everything felt right. His lips, his warmth, his presence. I wanted to let go, to dive into it completely, but something kept holding me back. Something in the back of my mind told me this wasn't how I should be acting. As he pulled me closer, his breath hot against my skin, the weight of what was happening crashed over me. I had a life, a marriage, and yet, here I was on the edge of something I didn't recognize. The temptation, the feeling of power and control, it was too much. But was I truly ready to give up everything for a momentary thrill? I pulled away suddenly, breathless and confused. Wait, John. I can't do this, I said, my voice shaking. John looked at me, his expression unreadable. For a moment, it seemed like the room had frozen. I could hear my heart pounding in my chest, the silence between us deafening. What do you mean? He asked, his voice soft. You've wanted this. We both need this. I thought I did, I whispered, struggling to steady my breathing. But not like this. Not with you. Not with us broken like this. John stood there, staring at me, and for the first time in a long while, I saw a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes. I just wanted to feel close to you again, he said quietly, his voice almost pleading. Everything feels so distant lately. I looked at him, really looked at him. The man I had married, the man I had loved. The weight of the past few weeks, the strain of life pulling us apart, became too much. I didn't know if we could come back from this, but I wasn't ready to throw it all away just yet. I'm sorry, I said, standing up and wiping the tears that had started to form. But this isn't the way. We need to figure this out the right way. Together. John didn't answer. He just stood there, his hands at his sides, his expression unreadable. As I walked toward the door, preparing to leave and give both of us the space we needed, something stopped me. I glanced back at him one last time, wondering if things would ever truly go back to how they were. But before I could step out, my phone buzzed. I looked down. The message was from the delivery guy, the one from earlier. Hey, it's me. I've been thinking, you might need someone who understands. If you ever want to talk or whatever, just know I'm here. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't expected this, not in a million years. Was this some kind of sign? Or was I just looking for an escape from the mess I had created? John watched me, his eyes narrowing slightly. What's that? I stared at the text for a moment longer, then turned to him. It's nothing, I said, my voice barely a whisper. But deep down, I knew things were never going to be the same. The choices I had made were not as simple as I had once believed. John's silence was loud as he turned away, walking to the other side of the room. The weight of what had just happened settled around me like an unspoken promise. And somewhere in that space between us, I realized that maybe we were both lost in ways we couldn't find our way out of.